May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be always acceptable to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Amen. Please be seated. Many years ago, as I was closing out my aunt's estate, and I was almost finished when I found the keys to her much-beloved car. I thought she had sold it, but she had not. She had parked that car in a garage, and it sat there for a lot of years. The car was a Delta 88, and it was now 15 years old, but it had hardly been driven. And while I was mulling over what to do with the car, my mother-in-law's car stopped working. The cost to repair Pam's vehicle was going to be much more than the value of her car, and so she was looking for a replacement that she could afford. I called Pam to ask if she'd like to have my aunt's car free. And she asked a question of me I did not see coming. "What color is it, dear?" Now, this was a woman who had no car. No way of getting to the hairdresser on Fridays, no way of getting to the grocery store or her doctor appointments or outings with her friends. Her question, "What color is it, dear?" didn't tell me what the right color needed to be, but it did tell me that the color of the car was more important to her in that moment than transportation. In Matthew's gospel, there is a great emphasis on the religious customs of Judaism. Pharisees, Sadducees, and scribes are sprinkled generously throughout this gospel, and they are often presented as clipboard carriers, people attentive to whether you and I are following all the rules and customs and observances of the faith. And today we witness a confrontation between those who represent the traditions of Judaism and Jesus. The confrontation has been brewing since Jesus began his ministry. The miracles he performs, the parables, and the large crowds that follow and gather him around him everywhere are stirring up concern among temple authorities. The prophets of old foretold the coming of a Messiah, the fulfillment of the law. And the people are beginning to wonder, is Jesus the one? Herod heard about it too, and he's nervous. He doesn't need an uprising in Israel. And so he presses the chief priests and the elders to keep the peace, keep the Israelites under control. It is important, I think, that the text specifically identifies the chief priests as the ones who will question Jesus. The chief priests are specially anointed. They are the only priests, the only people allowed to enter the innermost sanctum of the temple, the Holy of Holies. These are the priests who are in the presence of Yahweh. In today's text, Jesus is in the temple. He is teaching. And the chief priests and elders join those who are already gathered around Jesus. And they ask him two questions. By what authority are you doing these things? And who gave you this authority? Aren't those interesting questions? They aren't asking why he's healing people. They aren't asking how he turns water into wine. I'm a pretty big fan of wine. I would want to know that. They aren't asking, how did you feed so many people with so little food? How do you restore lepers to the fullness of life? What do these parables mean? These are not their questions. The questions of the chief priests reveal what they value: authority. On Friday, I attended a Laundry Love strategic planning session. And during the afternoon, we began looking at a foundation's grant application. Like most foundations, this one has a policy that when you receive a grant, you must report measurable results achieved through the use of the grant money. I sat back and listened as two seasoned grant writers began talking about how Laundry Love could frame questions that would gather the specific information needed to validate the grant. Clearly, it was not their first rodeo. They shaped questions I would have never imagined. Last week I read an interesting article about the art form of questions. The author suggested that questions beginning with the word what indicate the answers are statements of fact, and questions beginning with the word how indicate answers that represent a process. So Pam asked, "What color is it, dear?" The car was blue. The chief priest asked, "By what authority are you doing these things?" Jesus is the authority. Throughout most of my life, like many of you, I have completed a stewardship card every single fall. This week, we began to imagine what St. Christopher's 2024 card would look like. And as I was looking through past examples from St. Christopher's files and from my own files, it occurred to me that every pledge card I have ever seen asks 3 questions. How much? What are you committing it to? What pledge? What budget? And when will your gift be received? The whole card is about money, even though we believe that money is only one way we give to God. After wrestling with the chief priest's question today, I'm wondering if our opening question should be, why? Why does God invite you and me to give to God? When we pose that question to God, our hearts and minds are open to God's inspiration. And once we know our why, then the questions of what and how and when become meaningful, because those questions then reveal God's desire for us. So this week, take that question to God. Why do you invite us? Why do you invite me to give to you? Amen.